Om Satoma Satgamoya, Tamasoma Joytir Gamoya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya, Abir Abir Ramayeti, Rudra Yate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real, and lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to our Satsang on Saturday, followed in 2 hours by our God blog session, where we dive deeper into the teachings of the Dharma. It's our great boon and privilege to be able to know about this special truth in this day and age, when most of the world is running off after external things and rather swept up, caught up in what the Vedantic seers term the Maya, the world bewitching Maya, which tends to grab the attention of the human being and run it through the senses out to the objects, as the father of yoga has told us about, and then tends to stay there habitually and forget to retreat back within, where the kingdoms of heaven are and where that peace eternal persists in the human soul, called in Vedanta called the Atman, which is one with Brahman. The only distinction between Atman and Brahman is that Atman can surround itself with coverings, as it has done with, in our cases, with the body, the prana, the mind, its thought, and the ego package. That's called the 5 sheaths in Vedanta, and it's one of the best ways to remind us of the distinction between Purusha and Prakriti, between the eternal consciousness, which is nameless and formless, and beyond time and space, and that which is identifying with time and space. In the case of the seekers of truth, hopefully the better word than identifying would be just associating with name and form, so that consciousness can touch in on these outer mechanisms called upadhis, and then retreat from them in contemplation and meditation at will. That's the, you might say, the penultimate ideal of the Vedantist, to be able to merely associate with the realms of name and form. Another way in which they call that is just being the witness of phenomena. Sakshi Bhutam is the Sanskrit for that. And so we delve into things like that when we bring our minds to the level of Dharma. For some people, that might be a stretch. In other words, you have to bring the mind up. For beings like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Holy Mother, whose birthday was Thursday, and which we celebrated with a beautiful 4-hour live streaming special video on her, which can be seen if you want to look back on it. We have, in the case of those beings, they have to bring their minds down in order to think about the Dharma, because they're living deeply in what the seers of India call the Atma Gyan, that is the knowledge, the direct knowledge of the truth, of the eternal nature of the human being. As Swami Vivekananda had told us when he arrived here in the late 1800s, that man is just God walking around on two legs. Now you have to realize that. So he held this high ideal of the Atman being pure and perfect and equal in everyone, actually in everything, but equal in quantity and quality. That is, it can't be separated out or divided or raised or lowered like the mind's consciousness can be. But it is all pervasive and indivisible. And so it appears as the backdrop of consciousness, as Meister Eckhart has called it in his teachings in the Christian tradition. That's that background consciousness. So we would tend to call that the witness consciousness. And we practice being the witness of phenomena, world phenomena, mental phenomena, individual, in the individual sense. Also, what's going on in the minds of others, collective consciousness. And if we have the ability to go inside, as I've been talking about, then we'd be able to even look at the phenomena that's going on at the cosmic level. As we know, Sri Ramakrishna had so many darshans with various gods and goddesses. Gods and goddesses appeared to him in multitudes, to quote one of the slokas from the Ramakrishna Upanishad, which is a new Upanishad that's been written by the devotees of the great master. And we've been talking about him lately in terms of his name and in terms of our own organization, SRV, because when Swamiji was alive, he coined that phrase, sarva deva devi, svarupaya. Sarva means all-inclusive. Deva and Devi, of course, would mean gods and goddesses. And svarupaya would, in that context, mean the essence. So what Swamiji was trying to convey there was that all the gods and goddesses are now contained there in Sri Ramakrishna and in Holy Mother. And so you might say Ramakrishna covers the whole Vaishnava scope of things because Sri Ram and Sri Krishna are the ideals in that tradition. And then Vivekananda represents very well Lord Shiva. So you've got the Shaivites included into that ideation. And then, of course, Holy Mother would represent best and most purely the Shakti aspect of everything, the Divine Mother. So that's Shaktism. And there we would find that we've got 3 or 4 of the main darshanas of India all included in that one being. So this is why Swami Vivekananda came forth. You might also say that Vivekananda is also looked at very seriously as being the Lord Buddha of this age. We find a lot of information in the tradition about he being a great Buddhist leader in past lifetimes. Maybe some 1,000 years ago, as Holy Mother has said that Naren, which is of course Swamiji's pre-monastic name, Naren sits in meditation like a wooden statue for 700 years at a time. So that sounds very much like the Buddha. And so we look at this great manifestation, particularly on Holy Mother's birthday, which is this whole week, I think Thursday to Thursday, last Thursday to the coming Thursday covers both her solar birthday and her lunar birthday. So it's a very beautiful time to be looking at the sarva deva devi svarupaya principle and contemplating it and inviting it into your mind's inner sanctum, into your heart, and meditate upon it in your deepest contemplations, as the Upanishads say. So that's what we've been doing with our past week. What have all of you been doing? What have you been reading? Where did your studies take you? How were your meditations? And what did you learn anew from the traditions of Mother India and from all traditions, really? Because when we speak about Sri Ramakrishna, we also speak about him as being the paragon of all religious traditions which he accepted, all of them being true, but each of them having their own fingerprint, as it were, having their own way of expressing divine nature, some more through bhakti, like the devotional path and faith and grace, some more through the principle of non-duality, and some through this deep jnanam we were just talking about, this non-dual wisdom, and some through even more service-oriented, through the karma yoga pathway. So all of these are called the 4 yogas, and the religions, you can see how when you look at them individually, they adhere to these pathways, and they reveal things to us that allow us to be able to share from tradition to tradition, from darshana to darshana, from sampradaya to sampradaya, and it makes for a very rich field of spiritual realization for the individual seeker. So then maybe someone has something to offer for the satsang. Go ahead and please step forward. Share what you know. Yes, Chinmana. Good to see you and your brother together.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. Namaste, Babaji. I've been going back to one of your books, Reclaiming Kundalini Yoga, and in the 7th chapter, the Devi Gita, the new translation, and I've been really trying to contemplate, in particular, the great Rileka mantra, and I would just like to read some lines for you here. I am always reflected in the clear mirror of my Rileka mantra, so never forget it. All mantras are rendered fruitful if offered in it. It is conferred upon you by the Guru, my special emissary. Always revere that one and consider yourself blessed by his grace. And then in regards to the composition of the Rileka mantra, the Dream word itself, envision the mantra Ha in the Muladhara chakra, manifest the mantra Ra in the Anahata chakra, lovingly place the mantra I in the Aina chakra at the brow, and bestow the mantra M in the entire bijam hrim. So yeah, if you could just help us understanding this better, I guess, and just helping us getting more to understand the hrim bijam. I know it's obviously a very delicate thing to talk about, and it's a word with a bijam with a great power. So if you could just give us a couple of minutes about that, that would be highly appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, I can certainly try, because of course it's key to our pathway in Vedanta when we have the transmission of wisdom and actually bhakti and jnanam too, from India, these yogas we were just talking about, they all share well in the mantra yoga side of India too. That's like every one of the sampradayas I just mentioned, those who worship Brahma and Krishna and Shiva and Divine Mother and Ganapati, Ganesha, and so forth. They all have this very deep relationship with the mantra. And in order to know the mantra, of course, and you get these teachings more intensely and more spread out in the mother tradition, where you were just reading some excerpts from the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, actually, which is the Divine Mother scripture of India, one of the two. And she's taking Hrim apart into 4, actually, syllables. Ha, Ra, Im. And of course, in the tradition, people usually become familiar with the fact that they do that with the seed mantra of Brahman too, which is Om. We've got with Gaudapadas Karka and other great teachers have talked about the great word Om, the word, being one with Brahman, being the best signifier for Brahman, and how everything then comes spilling out of the word. So A would be the outer worlds, and U would be the inner worlds, and M would be the formless reality that they all get dissolved into. A would be the waking state, U would be the dreaming state, M would be the deep sleep state into which waking and dreaming get dissolved into every night, and then come back forth again into these levels of consciousness where everything gets solidified. And so if you think of the word as being that primal vibration that's, as I just talked about earlier, which is one with the background consciousness of everything, entire humming all the time, saturating everything. Like if you were up close to a bee's nest and you just hear it humming all the time. They're always busy in there, but you can't see the bees. It's like you begin to know a little bit like what this word signifies and how pervasive it is and how it's hiding in plain sight, as they say. And then how much meaning is in the word, not just in its three matras, A, U, M, the three portions of M, because the A can contain the five elements, the five senses, and then U can contain the subtle mind, the sukshma sharira, and everything that's in the mind in terms of thought, vibration. And they do the same then with Hara'im, Thrim, which is the mantra of transformation, which is specific to Mother Durga and Mother Kali, because those two goddesses have the most to do of all the aspects of the Divine Mother. They have the most to do with transforming the mind and purifying it. And other bijams have other abilities, like I'm. If you took that apart into A-I-M and you looked at that, or Shrim, if you took that apart and looked at its components, then you'd find out that they all specify a certain aspect of reality, or maybe several. So all of this is what's contained in a word. So you'd probably get an earful if you ask a Vedantis what's in a word. That famous question. Well, what's in a word after all? Or if you made a sort of an offhand statement that says, "Oh, it's just all words," then you get some raised eyebrows in the case of beings who have looked into the word back to its source, which is Om, and seen all the primal bijams come out of that. So Divine Mother herself holds these bijams, and she'll give them to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, particularly Brahma, at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, and he'll water them. He'll cause them to vibrate, and maybe bring those bees out of the hive for a while so that they can gather honey, if you want to use an analogy. And then in other words, all beings will begin to manifest in all worlds out of this one seed syllable. And so that's what you're talking about there when you read those excerpts that I actually borrowed from the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, that she wants you to look at the parts, the matras they're called, of that great word, and then meditate on them. Just like I told you just now, Lord Brahma would meditate on them when they were given to him at the beginning of a cosmic cycle. Well, at the beginning of your daily cycle, you should take that bijam that you've been given by your guru, as the book there was saying, and feel very fortunate that you've found a guru that had received it from his or her guru and then passed it on. So when you were reading that, I was thinking immediately about Swami Sheshananda. He just came straight into my head as soon as you mentioned those words that you were reading about the guru. So that's what he used to say about meeting Holy Mother. He says, when I left India and when she left her body, how did I keep in contact with her all these years? He was like in his 80s and his 90s when he said this. I kept in contact with her through her mantra that she gave me. So you could see that mantra would be a great connecting principle for all beings too. Whether or not they know that they're indivisible, that they're one indivisible consciousness or not, will have to be inspected and realized. And the best way of doing that would be by meditating upon the word. So anyway, each morning would be a beginning of a cosmic cycle to you, whereas you're calling everything up fresh again. And you see everything has unfolded like on a beautiful sunny day with greenery all around you and blue skies. And you have the great boon of being amidst a Sangha, a group of like-minded individuals who are spread around this world, which is a vast world, but on the other hand, it's a very tiny little world, tiny little dot in space. So you have this great boon of being able to know about the secrets and the mysteries of the word and how it was given in the beginning from Mother to the Trinity, and then how the Trinity watered it with their own love and with their own powers, their yogic powers, and how that created all the inner worlds. And there, when you were just reading it, those inner worlds are being called chakras. So the chakra at the Muladhara, you would concentrate on the first part of Ha, Ra, Im, Ahrim, and you'd assign it there, and you'd see how everything comes forth from there. And you'd assign the next to the Anahata, the heart chakra. And then the next mantra of the word would be assigned to the throat, third eye chakras. That's Vishuddha and Agya. And then finally to the Sahasrara when everything culminates. And all of that is being guided by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva as they were the archetypical souls that first received the word and then began and set time and space and motion, basically. Thinking about it, you set time and space and motion. So you're a version of them. You see, your antakarna, your fourfold mind, is similar to the mind of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva in a macrocosmic way. And that is, you're more like in the microcosmic way, and they're in the macrocosmic way. And so this is how everything burgeons forth from just an utterance, like a mantra or a mahavakya, and how much power is in that. But we have to meditate on it as those few lines are saying each day. You can read it once and say, that's beautiful philosophy. I believe in it. That's my path. And I'm going to follow it the rest of my life. But there's a lot more power in there that you may be overlooking or underestimating that can lighten up your life, brighten up your life, and cause your life to vibrate and your mind to vibrate in the way that these great seers that you love and admire have been doing in their lifetimes. And therefore, be very instrumental in bringing light to all beings, to all souls. I wrote a God blog last week, which we'll probably talk about in a couple hours here, about Sri Ramakrishna just seeing a tiny little tulsi leaf. Tiny little brown withered tulsi leaf, and yet it became one of the most important offerings in the puja, that little tiny leaf. So he was amazed to see that this little tiny leaf there, no matter what condition it was in, because Tulsi is a goddess, it's a cup of tea, it's a holy bush, it's holy basil, it's so many things. It's the goddess Tulsi whom Vishnu loves. So this little leaf, offered to the Lord makes the Lord happy, because immediately he thinks of Tulsi, which is this incredible healing power that is one of the aspects of Divine Mother. And so, for instance, then you couldn't just sit down and say, I'm having my Tulsi tea, this morning, a Vedantist couldn't do that. A Hindu couldn't do that. Maybe a health freak could do that, you see. Well, I've got to have my cup of Tulsi tea, but you couldn't sit down if you were sensitive seeker and just say, oh, this is just a mere cup of tea, this for my own personal health. That's only a very small portion of what Tulsi is. So anyway, Sri Ramakrishna mentioning that, I brought that out and turned it into one of the God blogs so that we could discuss it. And how the goddess is in everything. You might as well say the word Tulsi is just another great bijam. All the names of the goddess are like great bijams. It's just that when you concentrate on Om and take it into 3 parts, or Hrim and take it into 4 parts, then you're really just studying the secret of all the projected worlds of name and form and time and space. And then you're able to glean so much more out of your communications, outer and inner, because those all go by words. You're using words in that way. You'd automatically want to go towards higher mantras rather than just stay there at the lower mantras. So you can raise the vibration of your mind by thinking powerful words like you just read. It's a subject that can take up lifetimes, really. And that's not even just pondering it. Once you realize the truth of it, then it brings a lot of joy, bliss for people. I think that's why some of the seers get bliss, because they've understood the sweet pervasion. I'm writing a piece of music right now in here called Sweet Pervasion. So you realize the sweet pervasive nature of the word. And just the very thought of it, like the thought of the word Tulsi to Vishnu, transports you into a kind of elation that you savor inside of yourself. This is why they sit so still after a while, and just everything outside was just an outer version of that inner sweetness. So they would tend to, like Sri Ramakrishna's mind would tend to go into samadhi. That's the secret of how he went into samadhi. It's through thought and words, and how they got more and more refined. The vibration got more and more subtle. And as the outer coatings were stripped away from things, they revealed their essence, which was a kind of bliss, ananda. This is why so many thousands and thousands of souls have that as their last name. So we tend to look back with great gratitude on that day when we received the mantra from our guru. You unwrap the outer part of it, that's the third city of Mother, right? Or you might call it the first city, Tripura Sundari. Who was it that just wrote me and said, you're realizing more and more the inner cities of the goddess, you see. Tripura Sundari, that's just like saying Tulsi. So, another aspect of the goddess is this mother, as she represents these 3 levels of that same vibrating word that penetrated through your attachment to the world See, that's what's taking up all our time and effort. We're wasting time. We're wasting effort because all our energy is going toward the world and towards objects. And so we realize that that's not good for us, for our spiritual life. So then we pick up this knowledge, catch the drift of this knowledge, you see, and then a guru comes to heighten it for you and shows you a path to set foot upon. And then all of a sudden, it's like being caught at the head of the path. Go ahead, take another step, but you can't move through the blocks that are at the beginning of that path. That's called the Brahmagranthi at the root of the spine. I mean, you can use a metaphor outwardly and say there's a path out there and I've always wanted to walk it. I went out one day and I put one foot on it and I looked inside, it appeared at the path down the lane, you see. But I never actually convinced myself that I needed to take a few more steps so I could really explore what's out there, or in this case, in there. So that's just the same thing as taking your spine as the path. You see, your spine in a subtle sense. And the first step along that would be to break through this fear or this doubt, this reticence, that's called the Brahmagranthi, and not there. And you see so many people doing the same thing. They're walking by the head of the path, but not going into it. And so that's your ancestors going around in a circle. They've got rajas, and so they circulate, as Krishna says. And then every once in a while, some person disappears into the woods, you see. And you're wondering, what's in there? What did he see? And so you break through that attachment to the Brahmagranthi. That's what you just read to me, Chinmana. You see, at the base of the spine, the Sahasrara, you assign that ha, right? Ha, ra, im. You assign that first bijam, first matra, of that bijam to that place that you can't get through. And you penetrate through it with that. And then you start assigning all the others in order as you move inward. And they open the chakras, as Sri Ramakrishna said. And these lotus that were drooping, to quote him, all of a sudden bloomed inside of me. This is a very special and very secret experience, he concluded. So we're thinking it's rather rare. But back to that analogy I was using, I was saying that we're spending too much time on that, just getting through taking the first step of the path. So then we would need to use this mantra in a deeper way. We need to realize it in a deeper way and fuel it with our studies, fuel it with our devotions, fuel it with our meditations. Constantly, every day, intensify things. The secret and the mystery of the hollow stalk, right? Hollow stalk. We had that teaching in Portland a couple of visits ago. The Upanishad talked about it.
Babaji, in connection with all of this, reminds me of a conversation you and I were having recently about how people get on the path and they receive some instructions and then they just stay with those instructions for their entire life, for decades, without like incrementally increasing them. Maybe I don't have a question here. It's just it's just a comment that it's reminding me of what you said, and then also by way of looking at the lives of the direct disciples, how they did keep urging people to increase the amount of time allotted for meditation. On the one hand, we have Holy Mother working with householders and being gentle with them because they are sincere devotees and they have all these responsibilities. So she's gentle with them. And then we have the direct disciples who are working with monastics primarily, and they're urging them on to increase, to not let the mind pull them around. You know, if the mind doesn't want to concentrate, make it concentrate. You know, whereas Holy Mother working with householders might say something like, well, do some reading, you know, keep your time, but, you know, don't force it. And then we have the monastics saying, hey, you got to struggle. And somewhere in there, it seems like there's the householder yogi that somehow figures out how to do this without upsetting the apple cart. Can you say something about that?
Probably volumes, because I've seen so much of people. I mean, there's a lot of people other than the Sangha that you see around us when we get together that write me, and they're not necessarily joiners, and you know, people who want to, maybe they've been initiated 20, 30 years ago by some other teacher. And so a lot of those are writing me now and asking me about a sadhana that they got 20, 30, 40 years ago, and a mantra they've been using and practices they've been doing. And so I see that side of things. And what I see there is that, you know, a lot of stuckness, you know, they don't really have a path that's moving along all these years. On the other hand, you've got this stick to tradition kind of statement that if you have a good guru and a good mantra, you stick to it. So the intensification of it is what I was just talking about when you brought this up. And so I think probably a lot of these people that were initiated by early teachers in the 60s, 70s, and so forth, didn't stay close to their gurus. I'm noticing that they just, oh, I got the mantra now, and I'm free, and I'm going to go do this path, and then later on, kind of wake up to the fact that they haven't made that much progress, and now they have to find out another teacher somewhere. So we see that going on a lot, and these mantras they got, maybe they didn't know the meaning of them. This breathing exercise that was given to them, they're still doing it after 40 years. I mean, I ran into a couple of people like that recently. And they were asking me, you know, should I keep doing this? Because they had read one or two of the books. And, you know, I was talking about a living spiritual path and how you have to be walking it all the time and conscious of it. And they were asking me, well, should I keep doing this and such as this practice, this breathing exercise? They said, well, you didn't have to do that for more than a month, in my opinion. You know, you just do the limb, climb it, and go on to the next limb, you know. So, no, you don't have to do that breathing exercise anymore that teacher gave you 40 years ago. Because 40 years is long enough to test whether it's worked or not. And obviously, in your case, it isn't, because you're still asking about how to proceed along the path. So, you know, you didn't need that set of asanas anymore. You didn't need that bunch of breathing exercises anymore. What you need is pratyahara. Did you ever get to the fifth limb yet, where your mind actually got concentrated? Or have you been spending decades with an unconcentrated mind trying to solve your spiritual problems, or your life problems for that matter? So this needs to be incorporated in one big intense effort to break through these grunties, these knots in consciousness, and then begin to live free and have these higher thoughts that Swami Vivekananda was so good at communicating to us. So, you know, it's something that you feel very grateful for, having met a teacher that showed you how to do your practice intensely, but with grace, not stressing out, not overdoing it, Holy Mother used to say, don't meditate, don't force the mind to meditate, because it puts a blockage in the way of the goddess meditating through you. Like Ram Prasad's beautiful song where he says, "Oh, meditator, become the goddess. You are her essence." So if you were to all of a sudden think Mother's mine and I'm Mother's, and you really had that realization, and you sat down in next morning's meditation, you said, "Okay, Mother, let's you and I meditate," then you wouldn't be sitting there forcing the issues. I gotta meditate. How do I do that? And I'm going to force this, and I'm calling that intensification. But that's really not what we meant by intensification. Actually, not necessarily to do all that much more than what you're doing, because she used to say, if you could just concentrate on Brahman for 2 minutes a day, that would be enough for you. So there's something we're missing when and something that's getting in the way, like guilt, gets in the way of people in the West. I'm not doing enough and all that. But you are everything already. I mean, I remember Lex Hickson talking to us this way all the time, because he had reached that pinnacle where he could just with grace move in different directions of the path. And we saw him do that with religions even. So there's something that then is missing in us that sort of short circuits this ease that we should be. I mean, call it love if you want, or call it devotion. Look into yourself and bring something into the path that your soul's asking you for, and incorporate that into your studies, your meditations. And I mean, we know, for instance, when there's no meaning in your life, one of the best things to do is to serve others. It's like a hidden secret. If you can get into the karma yoga, then all of a sudden you stop thinking about yourself. Before, you were just thinking about yourself and calling hell down around your ears. Like Sri Ram says, Maya is destined to become crashing down around the heads and ears of all and sundry. In the Ramayana, he's like telling people when he went out on pilgrimage and he saw the Maya everywhere. So we're stressing it too much in that sense. And the other side of the coin is that, I'm already that, so I don't need to practice. So somewhere between those two poles, that people are vibrating like ping pong balls back and forth over the net, you've got to find that center place where you can do everything in the knowledge that your soul is perfect, but your mind needs to be cleared in order to see that perfection. And that's the way Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna, that's how they defaulted back to help people who had that issue going on. Because they just made the connection between self-effort and grace. As people would say, well, then I'm perfect and all this and all that, but yes, your Atma is perfect, but your mind still needs to meditate. Your mind still needs the scriptures. Your mind still needs devotions and pujas. Your mind still needs to serve others as God. So the whole thing is for the mind. That's how we got into this mess, and that's how we'll get out of it. It's either the gateway to hell or the doorway to heaven, as Sri Ramakrishna called it. And that's the Antakaran that we're talking about. That's why we study it. And divide it into 4 things, just like you divide the bijam cream into 4 things. And you want to take it apart and look at it. Like somebody wants to know how an automobile works, or Dalai Lama said, I really wanted to know how that watch works. So I took it apart. Pretty soon I could fix watches, that were broken. So for spirituality, that's a great meaning in that you take things apart and look at them closely. And you can't just do it with a book, and you can't just do it with a mala, and you can't, Holy Mother said this too. Basically, you're going to need the grace of the Lord, and you're going to need some intensified love. So you have to sit down with yourself and love the Lord in yourself. You have to take everything away like you would. That's why you go on retreats and so forth and so on. Just everyone, go into caves or go out in the wilderness, sit under a tree, whatever it is. They finally just took everything away and just decided to face off with themselves and learn to love themselves. And then all of a sudden they were back on track again, and the world seemed balanced and life went on without a hitch. So sometimes it's taking yourself to task, and other times it's giving yourself credit, the credit that you deserve. It's nothing, that like a formula that you can figure out perfectly at all times, in all cases, in every situation. It's something that has to live and change, and you have to flow with it. It's more Taoistic, the way they like to explain it. Vedanta is very good at stating the truth. Yoga is very good at telling you how to do your practice. But, maybe you're going to need some other look at a way of how to do this gracefully, how to do it, giving yourself all the encouragement that you need, so that the tradition gets blended with this inner intuition or know-how that some souls, like our great master, had. Swami Vivekananda was just walking around our country for a couple of years, some months on 2 occasions, just exuding that. That's why people went to him and were amazed. And we saw a lot of that manifested in our founder too, like Sixon. It just hit on something, if you want to put it simply. It's this natural, spontaneous flow. Is there a word for it? Sahaja, probably. It's the best word I ever came upon. It's just this sahaja samadhi, this naturalness of samadhi. So it's not like something high out of your reach, and it's not like something you'll never get. It's not like something that is going to be granted to you by a lot of strain and effort, sweat. It's just the natural state and condition of the soul. That's just needing a few things, a few veils pushed away. Everyone has the Atman in them, but as Ramakrishna said, some people's Atman is covered by mounds of earth, and other people's are just shining at the surface, just brush away through pebbles, and there it is. So that's what we need to do, brush away a few of those pebbles that are left remaining, covering this natural state of sahaja. In the 5 minutes left, is there something else that's niggling on one of our minds?
Also, we have two people attending by phone, and just want to welcome them to ask questions as well.
I've got a niggling question too.
All right, niggle it away.
I'll niggle away here. In the Gita, there are two sections. It seems a little contradictory. Now, I've always had a little problem or confusion about understanding this when he says, let's see, in chapter 7, And whatever beings are of sattva, rajas, or tamas, know them to proceed from me. Still I am not in them. They are in me. And then in chapter 9, he says, but those who worship me with devotion, they are in me, and I am also in them. What's the difference?
Well, you came upon the same thing I came upon in my early studies of the Gita. I ran into that, and there's one other statement in there where he even runs a middle ground with that perspective. I'm in them, they are not in me. And then he said, at one point, I think he says, none of them are in me. Very early on, he's like really lowering the boom on people because they're born under the regime of Prakriti, right? So none know me. So I'm not in them, they're not in me. So he starts off very starkly. And then after a few chapters of discourse to Arjuna, all of a sudden he brings in this little hope avenue, and finally, because he's talking about people who are under the regime of rajas, and tamas and so forth. But then when sattva comes, and then they begin to love the Lord with all their heart, all their soul, and their entire mind, as Jesus said, then all of a sudden, I'm in them and they are in me. They are near and dear to me. And, by the end, the very end of the Gita, he's taking actually even a fourth perspective that if you teach this wisdom, you and I are one. So pretty soon you've got this disappearance of the distinction between I and thou. It's there at the end of the Gita too. So I look at it as just 4 levels of the soul's awakening to Krishna, being in them, and the different levels of veils you might be casting off as you come closer to that fact. So and it works because you see Vishada in Arjuna getting worn away. Pretty soon he's asking questions. What's adhyatma? What's deva? What's adhyagya? He pretty soon he starts asking questions about that he's heard when he's read and studied in his earlier life, and then soon he's admitting that his depression is gone. That he, of course, by then he got the vision that Sri Krishna touched him and gave him the vision. So that pretty much blew everything out of the water, and had to come running back to the body-mind mechanism just to assess it again, to see what just happened to him. And then by the end, he's saying, all you have destroyed all my doubts. I'm 100% dedicated to you. And now he realizes that he's the Lord in human form and not just the king of Mathura or a good friend that he could rely on in earlier days. So I think it moves like that. So you're going to have to assign it to the perspective that he's talking from in any given part of those 18 discourses. It's really a beautiful, beautiful move he's making on people's doubt, people's fear. That would be like a child coming up to some adult that it loved, you see, and then the adult just spurning him. I don't want you, go away, You're not in me, I'm not in you. You see, we're different. And then, the child going away just, all unhappy. Then later, a door opens, and then the child comes close to the adult and says, well, come here, sit on my lap for a second, talks to him a little bit, sends him away. And then pretty soon, the child and he are getting really close together. and finally they're fast friends. So I think that's the way Krishna treats the soul of a depressed Arjuna and guides him through that depression so that he'll remember never to fall into it again, rather than just give him everything at once, Oh, you're in me, I'm in you. Aren't we great together? Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Because evidently that doesn't work, very often, that people will just wake up with that kind of all-out love. It has to be provisional at first, so that the soul will learn not to fall into battlefields of Kurukshetras anymore again, and can really realize the truth of their divine nature, and become a seer. Householders, warriors, all of that, all well and good, but if you're talking about seerhood, then that's something very special, very high level that the soul reaches before they attain to that highest samadhi. So thank you all for participating today. And we salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life, death, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one as the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we, through that grace, go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. Om and Shrim.